We'll begin with breaking news coming in right now. We're learning this. U.S. Attorney General Merrick Garland is expected to announce the results of the DOJ's investigation into the Minneapolis Police Department. This is after the DOJ began investigating the department after the killing of George Floyd back in May of 2020 in terms of how their officers were trained, how this was handled within the department. Not a lot of known details as far as this investigation goes in terms of the specifics. But either way, you can see the press set up there. There is an announcement set today. We believe, again, this involves the Minneapolis Police Department, again, in the wake of the killing of George Floyd. What the DOJ's findings are, what they were looking for, what they're announcing, again, that is unknown. But that should happen at any moment here. As you can see, the press is set for that. If that does begin within this hour of national report, because again, this could shape up to be perhaps a major change within the Minneapolis Police Department. There are a number of items. As you see the doors open here, there's the AG Merrick Garland walking out now, addressing the podium here as those gather behind him. What are those findings? We'll find out just moments away. Let's listen live if we can. Here's the AG.
Good morning, everyone. Here with me today are Associate Attorney General Vanita Gupta, Assistant Attorney General for Civil Rights Kristen Clark, and First Assistant United States Attorney Ann Billson. I also want to acknowledge Mayor Jacob Fry, Council President Andrea Jenkins, Community Safety Commissioner Cedric Alexander, and Police Chief Brian O'Hara. Thank you all for joining us today. On May 25th, 2020, George Floyd was killed at the hands of a law enforcement officer who was sworn to protect him. As Mr. Floyd died, other officers failed to intervene. The Justice Department has since convicted 4 former Minneapolis police officers for their roles in the death of George Floyd. As I told George Floyd's family this morning, his death has had an irrevocable impact on the Minneapolis community, on our country, and on the world. His loss is still felt deeply by those who loved and knew him, and by many who did not. George Floyd should be alive today. Shortly after I was sworn in as Attorney General, I announced that the Justice Department had opened a separate civil investigation into whether the Minneapolis Police Department, the MPD, and the City of Minneapolis engage in a pattern or practice of unconstitutional or unlawful policing. I am here today to announce the findings of that investigation. I am also announcing that the Justice Department, the City of Minneapolis, and the MPD have agreed in principle to negotiate towards a consent decree. Since opening the investigation, the Justice Department has engaged in a comprehensive review of MPD's policies, training, supervision, and use of force investigations. Our review focused on MPD as a whole, not on the actions of any individual officer. We observed many MPD officers who did their difficult work with professionalism, courage, and respect. But the patterns and practices we observed made what happened to George Floyd possible. As one city leader told us, quote, "These systemic issues didn't just occur on May 25th, 2020. There were instances like that that were being reported by the community long before that." The Department of Justice has concluded that there is reasonable cause to believe that the Minneapolis Police Department and the City of Minneapolis engaged in a pattern or practice of conduct that violates the First and Fourth Amendments of the United States Constitution. There is also reasonable cause to believe that they engage in conduct that violates Title VI of the Civil Rights Act of 1964, the Safe Streets Act, and the Americans with Disabilities Act. Specifically, we found that MPD and the City of Minneapolis engages in a pattern or practice of using excessive force, unlawfully discriminating against Black and Native American people in enforcement activities, violating the rights of people engaged in protected speech, and discriminating against people with behavioral disabilities and responding to them in crisis. I will discuss each finding in somewhat greater detail. First, we found that the Minneapolis Police Department routinely uses excessive force, often when no force is necessary.
All right, again, you're listening to a major moment here for the Minneapolis Police Department. This is Attorney General Merrick Garland announcing his findings after a years-long investigation by the DOJ. This is after May 25th, 2020, the killing of George Floyd, after 4 officers were convicted, specifically Derek Chauvin. Again, his findings finally revealed to the public. The AG essentially announcing that he finds the Minneapolis Police Department of using excessive force, discrimination, also violating First Amendment rights of the citizens there in Minneapolis and engaging with people with disabilities, violating the Disabilities Act, violating the Civil Rights Act, violating the Constitution. Again, this from the Attorney General. In terms of what could happen for the Minneapolis Police Department, he already alluded, the AG alluded to a consent decree that would be put in place. It appears that's where he's going right now. He's getting specific in terms of the findings of what we just announced, but on the whole, on the surface, that's what he found. If a consent decree is put in place by the Minneapolis Police, or put in place by the federal government for the Minneapolis Police Department, that is a major move. That is a major shift in terms of policing in this area. This has been done in other major metropolitan cities as well. Essentially, an example of what the consent decree would do is the federal government would put this agreement in place where, for an example, if they were on a chase, if the police were on a chase with a suspect and the suspect leads them in high speeds of, let's say, 25 miles per hour or more, the police would not be authorized to pursue that chase. They would have to stop and back off and would not be able to violate that. Again, just one example of what a consent decree would look like. Again, there will be federal guidelines for the local police to follow. Again, that appears to be what has been put in place. Major announcement by the DOJ. Will continue to follow that again for the Minneapolis Police Department. That years-long investigation has wrapped up.